You're not weak, you're unarmed. The dark mindset. Nobody gave you. You're not getting hurt because people are evil. You're getting hurt because you walk into psychological war zones unarmed, trying to win with politeness and explanations. And in a world built on power, that is suicide. Picture it. The last time someone humiliated you in front of others. The comment that cut a little too deep. The partner who turned your concerns back on you. You felt your throat tighten, your face heat up, your heart race. Your brain scrambled to grab words, to defend, to explain, to prove you're not the villain in their story. You over-explained. You justified. You apologized for your tone, your timing, your feelings. You chased their approval like a child begging a parent not to be mad. And in that moment, you broadcast one thing to every manipulator in the room. Weakness. You told them your frame is negotiable. Your reality is up for debate. Your self-worth is on the auction block. This is not about truth. It is about power. The one who defends is the one who silently accepts the other person as judge. The one who explains is the one who hands over authority to define what happened, what it meant, and what you are allowed to feel about it. Attacks are rarely about facts. They are probes, tests, pressure on the soft spots to see where you leak. So why do you keep leaking? Why do you keep rushing to be understood by people who are not interested in understanding you at all? Because you have been trained to amputate your own weapons. You have been told your anger is dangerous, your coldness is cruel, your ability to detach is toxic. You were taught to fear the very parts of you that could have protected you. Be warned that conditioning is not an accident. A person without anger cannot set boundaries. A person who cannot be cold cannot walk away. A person who cannot detach is permanently available to be guilt-tripped, love-bombed, and controlled. You become easy prey, not because others are monsters, but because you refuse to pick up the tools that would stop the hunt. Picture it again. Every recent betrayal, the friend who used you as an emotional dumping ground then vanished. The boss who stole your work and smiled while you stuttered through explanations. The partner who weaponized your empathy and called you selfish when you finally said no. None of this was random. It was the predictable outcome of walking into a dark game while insisting it should be fair. But there is a different way. The parts of you buried, your capacity for calm anger, for strategic silence, for ice-cold distance, are not your enemy. They are the armor and blades you were never shown how to use. When you reclaim them, you stop being emotionally hunted. You stop auditioning for mercy. Let's begin. Because there is a specific, learnable, dark psychology mindset that flips the script, from being the one who explains to being the one no one dares to test. You become dangerous, you become untouchable. The night you realized you're always on trial. The first step to power is brutal. You have to admit how powerless you feel. Not in theory, in your body. In those tiny social moments where your frame collapses and you hand your authority to anyone who raises an eyebrow. Picture it. You're at a dinner with friends. The plates are half empty, the wine is half gone, the masks are half off. Someone leans back, smirks and says, "So how's that little career experiment going?" Or, "Still single? You're so picky?" The table laughs, not loud, just enough. Your chest tightens. Heat crawls up your neck. Your pulse spikes in your ears. Your brain scrambles for something reasonable to say, something that will prove you're not a failure, not pathetic, not the child they've quietly decided you are. You hear yourself defend, explain, justify your path. You pretend you're relaxed. Your body knows you are on trial. This is not about the words. It is about the courtroom that suddenly appears in your head. They become the judge. You become the defendant. And the sentence is always the same. Convince us you deserve respect. Now, zoom out. Same pattern, different stage, a work meeting. Your manager says, there were concerns about your last report. Vague, slippery. You feel that same jolt. Shoulders tense. Breathing goes shallow. You rush to clarify, to show your effort, to over-explain the context. You flood them with data while they sit back and measure your anxiety. They are not listening to your facts. They are reading your fear. At home, your partner says, you never really show up for me. You immediately list examples. All the times you did show up, all the sacrifices. The more you argue your innocence, the more guilty you feel. The more they press, the more you shrink. In the group chat, someone makes a passive-aggressive joke at your expense. On social media, a stranger calls you selfish, arrogant, fake. You feel the urge in your fingertips, that compulsion to type an essay, to clear your name, to correct their reality. You don't post anything, or you do. Either way, your nervous system has already bowed. Notice the sensations of submission, the flush in your face, the tight jaw, the knot in your stomach. Cortisol flooding your system while your mind replays the scene on a loop. What you should have said, the line you missed, the comeback that would have won. Hours later, you are still arguing with ghosts. You walk away from these moments not feeling seen, not feeling respected. You walk away smaller, exposed, contaminated with a strange, sticky guilt, even when you did nothing wrong. That is the cost of living as a permanent defendant. Be warned, this is not about being nicer to yourself. It is about seeing the pattern with cold, surgical clarity. A subtle jab at dinner, a vague criticism at work, a lover's accusation, a stranger's comment. Different scenes, same ritual. They attack, you defend, they control the frame. So here is the stinging question you can no longer avoid. Why do you keep living like a defendant in a courtroom where everyone else gets to play judge and jury over your worth, your motives, and your identity? And what happens to your life when you walk out of that courtroom and never return? The courtroom in your head, why defending is silent surrender. You are not in a relationship. You are not in a conversation. You are in a courtroom you did not consent to enter. Picture it. The accusation lands, you're selfish, you're late again. You don't care about this team. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your brain scrambles for evidence and alibis. You feel the heat, the cortisol, the old childhood panic that someone with authority is disappointed in you. And before you even breathe, your mouth opens to explain. The moment you rush to defend, you sign an invisible contract. They are the judge, you are the accused. Their version of reality is the law, and you are a frightened child begging for acquittal. This is not about the words you say. It is about the frame you accept. The one who explains is the one who submits. The one who defends is the one who silently agrees. Your opinion of me has power over my life. Let's begin with that word, frame. Frame is the invisible story that decides who has authority, who is on trial, and whose interpretation of reality is treated as default truth. In every interaction, someone's frame dominates, not both. 1. When you defend, you are not clarifying. You are confirming that their frame is supreme and your role is to react to it. Look at how this plays out at work. A manager hints, some people question your commitment. You rush in, no, I stayed late, I sent the emails, I finished the report. On the surface, you are correcting the record. Underneath, you have accepted the deeper premise that your worth is a case to be argued, that you stand in front of a jury of faceless some people whose approval governs your future. You have traded power for the illusion of being understood. And does it even work? Research on framing effects shows that people cling to their initial story even when the facts are identical. Defending yourself rarely changes minds, it cements roles. You prove you are willing to fight on the battlefield they chose, their opinion of you. The manipulator wins before the first sentence leaves your mouth because you agreed that their attack defines the game. Be warned, every defense has a hidden price tag. You pay in status. You pay in respect. You pay in perceived strength. You get, in return, a brief, fragile sense of relief when they say, "Okay, fine." But that relief evaporates the next time they want control, and they will because you already showed them the lever. This is not about being silent to be polite. It is about refusing to play defendant in a fake courtroom. The accusation never had the power. Your need to answer it did. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. But how do you walk out of that courtroom without saying a word and still keep all the power in the room? That is where the dark psychology mindset takes its first real step. Machiavelli's whisper. Brutal power, truths you were never taught. That first real step was whispered 5 centuries ago by a man you were taught to fear, not to understand. Niccolo Machiavelli. The name alone has been turned into an insult, a cartoon villain, a manipulator hiding in the shadows. But that is not who he was. He was a cold-eyed analyst of power. Picture it. Renaissance Italy, courts, conspiracies, families poisoning each other for a throne. Machiavelli watched men lie, betray, and kneel with a smile, then plunge a knife as soon as the room turned dark. He did not write about how humans should behave. He wrote about how they actually behave when status, fear, and survival are on the line. No filters. No fairy tales. Now picture your upbringing. You were trained to be agreeable, to be nice, to seek validation. From parents, teachers, bosses. Smile. Cooperate. Don't make people uncomfortable. You were rewarded for compliance, not clarity. For being a good child, not a powerful adult. While you were learning to apologize for existing, other people were quietly learning how to control the frame in every room they entered. This is not about turning you into a villain. It is about ripping off the mask of naivety that keeps you weak. Modern conditioning tells you that if you explain yourself clearly, if you stay kind, if you avoid conflict, people will respect you. Machiavellian realism says something else. People respect power, boundaries, and emotional control. They respect the one who does not flinch. Look at politics, ancient or modern. A king does not defend his every decision to the crowd. A president does not explain every rumor. They speak rarely, choose their words surgically, and let others argue in circles. The same principle governs your life. Family arguments, office politics, online conflicts, the sibling who always plays victim, the co-worker who questions your competence in front of the team, the stranger on the internet who attacks you to farm attention, different costumes, same game. Dark psychology, properly understood, is not about malice. It is about seeing the full human spectrum instead of pretending everyone is kind and fair. Manipulation, fear, envy, self-interest. Research on the dark triad shows that mild levels of traits like Machiavellianism can correlate with career success in competitive environments. Why? Because those people study leverage while everyone else clings to comforting illusions about nice behavior. But there is a different way. You do not have to be cruel to see clearly. You can practice strategic empathy, reading motives, vulnerabilities, and leverage points without becoming a puppet. You can train emotional detachment so an attack hits your skin, not your core. You can set boundaries that say, without a word, I will not play defendant in your fake courtroom. Be warned, most people will never touch this level of clarity. It threatens their story that the world is fair and that their weakness is virtue. If you keep watching, you are choosing something else. A more dangerous, more honest reality. you become dangerous, you become untouchable. And now we turn from theory to practice. How do you use this mindset in real time when the next attack lands? From emotional puppet to psychological fortress. So let's be brutally clear. Right now, you are easier to control than you want to admit. A comment can hijack your mood. A sigh can ruin your day. A disappointed look can send you into a spiral where you defend, explain, and beg to be seen as good. Picture it. Your phone lights up with a passive-aggressive text. Wow, guess you're too busy for real friends now. You feel the heat in your chest, the cortisol spikes, your brain scrambles for a defense, crafting paragraphs to prove you're not selfish, not cold, not the villain in their story. In that moment, you are an emotional puppet, string by string, a guilt trip from family, a partner threatening to leave if you don't comply, a manager using concern about your attitude to push unpaid extra work, love bombing, then withdrawal, praise, then punishment. Your nervous system dances to every external mood swing as if the whole world has authority to judge your worth and dictate your reality. But there is a different way. Now picture this. Same text, same attack, different you. The message lands, your heart jumps for half a second, and then stillness. No essay, no defense, no explanation. You see the tactic, you name it silently. Guilt, control, abandonment threat, and you refuse the role of obedient child. You reply with a simple boundary or with nothing at all. Their storm rages, your weather stays clear. This is the shift from emotional puppet to psychological fortress. Insults hit the wall and fall. Accusations no longer drag you into a fake courtroom where you stand shaking in front of an imaginary jury. Other people's moods stop being the remote control for your nervous system. You are no longer the defendant. You are the one who sets the frame. Psychologists have found that people who regulate emotion under pressure are far harder to manipulate because influence feeds on arousal. Emotional detachment and stoicism are not numbness, they are trained restraint. You learn to feel the first wave, then choose your response. You create delay, space, authority. And in that space, another power comes online, strategic empathy. You stop asking, why are they saying this about me? And start asking, what do they want? Where is their weakness? What are they afraid of losing? You read motives, not words. You notice the coworker who flatters, the lover who future fakes, the friend who only calls when they need something. You stop being confused. You start seeing the game. Then you begin to control the frame. You use silence as a weapon, a raised eyebrow instead of a rushed explanation, a calm, no, that doesn't work for me, instead of a 5-paragraph apology. Research shows that people who say no clearly are respected more over time. The crowd resents you in the moment, then reorganizes around your boundary. Be warned, this mindset is dangerous, not because you become cruel, but because you become untouchable by guilt, manipulation, and social pressure. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. This is not about turning into a villain. It is about reclaiming your shadow, your capacity for cold observation, refusal, and power, and integrating it so you use it consciously, ethically, to design a life where you are no longer easy prey. In the next part, we will break down the exact tools, how to detach on command, how to read motives in seconds, and how to let your silence do the talking when the next attack comes. Let's begin. The price of power, what has to die inside you. The tools are the easy part. The real price is who you have to kill. Picture it. There is a quiet execution that has to happen inside you. No blood, no screaming, but something dies. The version of you that begs to be understood, the version that needs permission, the version that believes if you explain your reality clearly enough, you will finally be safe. That part of you was born as a child, a small body, big authority figures. You learned that survival meant being seen as good, innocent, justified. You ran after your parents with watery eyes saying, "I didn't mean it." You stood in front of teachers defending your intentions. Your nervous system wired this equation. If they see I am good, they will not abandon me. You did not outgrow that. You upgraded it. Now it is your boss, your partner, the stranger on the internet. You still chase the same verdict. Good, harmless, misunderstood, but pure. You over-explain in meetings. You send paragraphs to someone who disrespected you. You defend yourself to people who have no authority to judge you. Different faces, same courtroom. Be warned, this is not about a clever trick to win arguments. It is about an ego death. When you train yourself not to defend, not to chase approval, not to react on command, it will feel like betrayal. Betrayal of the child in you who believes that being liked is oxygen. You will feel it in your body. The accusation lands. The heat rises in your chest. Cortisol spikes. Your brain screams, "Say something so they don't think you're bad." And you do nothing. No defense, no explanation, only calm observation. That silence will feel like you are letting yourself be murdered, but you are the one holding the knife. You are killing the addict, not the self. This is where dark psychology becomes a mindset, not a party trick. You detach emotionally, not because you are broken, but because you refuse to let manipulators pull your strings. You stop proving your goodness and start asserting your authority. You do not flinch. You do not explain. You let their attack hang in the air until it rots on its own. The world mislabels this as cold. They are wrong. This is not about becoming numb. It is about becoming unhookable. People stop testing what does not move. They stop poking what does not yelp. They feel, often unconsciously, that there is no handle to grab, no weakness to exploit. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. Ask yourself, are you willing to kill the version of you that needs to be liked in order to become the version that is respected, feared, and left alone when it matters most? Because the next step is brutal. We are going to walk through exactly how to sit in that fire without blinking while other people's masks start to slip. Crossing the threshold. Let's begin. The dark psychology rebuild. So here is where it changes. Up to now, we've been burning the old costume. Now we start building the weapon that wears your name. The emotional groundwork is done. You felt the sting, the shame, the urge to explain and beg the invisible judge for mercy. That phase is over. From this point on, we are not soothing you. We are dissecting you, piece by piece, belief by belief, reflex by reflex. Picture it. Your mind laid out on a cold metal table, and we are going to see exactly who installed each wire and why. Be warned, this is not about comfort. This is not about blaming your parents, your ex, or your boss. It is about taking back authority over the machinery that has been running you since you were a child. We will track how you were programmed, how that programming projects itself into your adult life, and how manipulators read those patterns like a manual. Here is the roadmap. First, childhood conditioning, the punishments, the silent treatments, the guilt, the praise you had to earn by shrinking yourself. Then, how that script now controls your relationships, your work, your reactions in every attack and every argument. After that, emotional detachment and stoic control, training your nervous system not to flinch, not to defend, not to explain, but to observe. Then strategic empathy, learning to read motives, weakness, and leverage in others without getting pulled into their chaos. Then frame and boundaries, how to hold your reality so solid that other people bounce off it. Finally, long-term life design through dark psychology, using all of this not to hurt people but to build a life where you are very hard to hurt. And we cross that threshold with a ritual, a phrase, a switch. For the rest of this video, every time you hear me say, "Let's begin," that is your doorway. That is the moment you step out of emotional reactivity and into cold, analytical self-reconstruction. Heart off, eyes open, no flinching. So here is the rule. For the next minutes, you are forbidden to defend yourself in your own head. You are not allowed to justify. You are not allowed to explain why you had to people please, overshare, chase, or submit. You will watch your patterns like a scientist watching an animal in the wild, detached, curious, honest. Can you handle that level of ruthless self-honesty, or do you still need your illusions more than you need your power? Pattern interrupt. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Feel how much of your body is braced to be judged. That tension is your old operating system trying to survive. But there is a different way. If you stay with this process, if you walk through each layer without running back to your old defenses, you will come out with a mental operating system most people never even realize exists. Calm under attack, silent when others scramble. When able to read the room, hold your frame, and design your life instead of reacting to it. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. Let's begin. Age 5 on the stand, how you were trained to beg for mercy. Calm under attack, silent when others scramble. That sounds powerful, but right now your nervous system is wired for something else, begging the invisible judge for mercy. Picture it. You are 5 years old, standing in a kitchen or a classroom or a hallway that suddenly feels like a prison. An adult towers over you. The air goes tight. Their face hardens. Then the words land, "Did you do this? Why did you do that?" Your stomach drops. Heat rises in your chest. Your throat closes. The cortisol spikes, and your brain explodes into one frantic objective: survive. You scan their tone, their eyes, the angle of their body. Are they angry? Are you safe? Are you about to lose love, safety, belonging? So you do what a smart child does. You explain. You defend. You rush to hand over your reality in little, desperate pieces. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. He started it. You believe that if you can make them understand, the punishment will soften, the voice will calm, the door will not slam, you will not be abandoned. This is not about truth. This is not about justice. It is about power. The parent, the teacher, the early authority figure becomes the original judge in your psyche. They control food, warmth, affection, and whether your small body feels safe in its own home. You learn a brutal equation. Explanation equals less pain. Defense equals protection. Compliance equals survival. Be warned, that logic worked. It saved you. A child cannot walk out of the house. A child cannot fire their teacher. So your brain carved a rule into stone. When accused, plead. When attacked, convince. When confronted, hand the other person the frame and hope they use it gently. The problem is you grew up, but that part of you did not. A fragment of your psyche is still 5 years old on the stand. Every time your boss questions a report, that child wakes up. Every time a partner says, "Why didn't you text me back?" that same courtroom lights up. Every comment online that twists your words. Same judge, same panic, same script. You feel it as that familiar surge, the urge to over-explain your schedule, to send the 3-paragraph text, to dump screenshots, proof, context. You are not talking to your boss or your partner. You are talking to the ghost of the adult who once held total control over your world. This is why attacks today feel so disproportionate. A casual criticism at work triggers abandonment terror. A raised eyebrow from a lover feels like exile. Your body is not in 2026. It is back in that kitchen, that classroom, that hallway. But there is a different way. Dark psychology starts with seeing the script itself, seeing that when you rush to defend, you are not exercising adult power, You are reenacting a child's plea for mercy. You hand strangers the authority your parents once had and wonder why you feel weak. Here is the tragedy. You have adult options, adult resources, adult freedom, yet you still act as if the only escape is a convincing explanation. You are an adult with adult power, still running a child's courtroom script. And until you see how that script contaminates every modern relationship you have, you will keep reliving the same trial with different faces forever. Same trial, new faces, how you keep casting. Everyone as judge, same trial, new costumes. You left your parents' house, but you did not leave the courtroom. You simply moved it into your office, your bedroom, your group chats, your social media feed. The script stayed, the faces changed. Picture it. Your boss raises an eyebrow in a meeting. Your manager hints that some people aren't pulling their weight. Your romantic partner says, "We need to talk." Your in-laws make a passive-aggressive comment at dinner. Your friend group goes quiet in the chat after you say something real. A stranger on the internet drops a smug, poisonous comment under your post. Feel what happens in your body, the heat in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the spike of adrenaline that whispers, "You're under attack." Instantly, the child in you stands up and walks to the front of the imaginary court. You start to defend, you start to explain, you start building a case to present to an authority that does not actually exist. You send the long email to your boss, clarifying every detail. You write the essay text to your partner, dissecting your motives. You overshare with your in-laws to prove you're responsible. You DM your friend to see if they're mad at you. You reply to the random stranger online, paragraph after paragraph, as if their handle has the power to decide your worth. This is not about information, it is about power. Every time you rush to explain, you perform a ritual. You hand them the gavel. You silently announce, "Your opinion of me decides whether I get to feel safe and worthy." You crown them judge over your reality, and you crawl into the defendant's chair, waiting for a verdict. Underneath every word you type, there is a quiet plea. "Please accept my explanation. Please see I'm good. Please don't withdraw love, status, or opportunity from me." That is the real script. That is the child begging the parent not to walk away, replayed through bosses, partners, in-laws, friend groups, and faceless followers. Be warned, this behavior reeks of weakness, not moral weakness, strategic weakness. Predators, narcissists, and every skilled manipulator can smell that need from across the room. They see how fast you scramble to fix their perception. They see how terrified you are of disapproval. To them, that is not empathy, that is leverage. The one who must defend is the one who can be controlled. The one who cannot tolerate being misunderstood will dance on command. They attack, you explain. They withdraw, you chase. They question, you submit to their frame. But there is a different way. Dark psychology is not about becoming cruel. It is about refusing to bleed in the water. You learn emotional detachment. You let people be wrong about you. You stop handing out gavels to anyone with a title, a ring on your finger, or a comment box. And here is the real tension. If every defense is a silent coronation of someone else as your judge, what happens when you simply stop putting people on that throne at all? What happens when you walk into the courtroom, see the empty bench, and refuse to sit in chains? You become dangerous. You become untouchable. But to do that, you must learn what to do instead of defending, and that is where the game turns dark in your favor. Upgrade the law from needing to be understood to demanding respect. So here is the upgrade. Stop begging to be understood. Start demanding to be respected. Machiavelli said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved." People hear that and picture violence, cruelty, chaos, but picture it. Modern life doesn't run on swords and executions. It runs on perception, on consequence. Today, fear often looks like this. They pause before they speak to you. They think twice before they attack your frame. They know there is a cost. Be warned, this is not about becoming a cartoon villain. It is about understanding that in a world of manipulators and weak boundaries, fear translates into deep respect, into the quiet awareness that you are not a toy, not a child, not a person who can be pushed without reaction. When people sense that, their behavior changes before you ever open your mouth. So here is the new maxim. It is much safer to be respected than understood. Repeat it. Let it cut through your old programming, because when you chase understanding, you expose your throat. You explain, you overshare, you turn your inner world into public property and invite every stranger to judge your reality. When your goal is please understand me, you become predictable, pliable. You signal that your emotional stability depends on their ability to see your heart. That is a gift to any manipulator. All they have to do is withhold understanding, and you will dance. You will defend. You will bleed information they can use later, but there is a different way. Respect is not built on perfect explanations or emotional transparency on demand. Respect is built on boundaries, on consistency, on the quiet, terrifying fact that you are willing to walk away. Studies on boundary setting show that people who say a clean no are respected more over time. Why? Because boundaries announce, I am not under your control. Picture it. Someone pushes you this week. A boss piles on work and expects you to smile. A partner pokes at an old wound. A friend laughs at your goal. Your old pattern is to launch into a speech, to explain why it hurts, to make them see your side. Watch what happens when you do the opposite. You state your position once, calm, clear, no essay. That doesn't work for me. Don't speak to me like that. I won't discuss this right now. Then you enforce the boundary. You change the subject. You leave the room. You let the silence do the talking. You let them reveal whether they can handle it. This is not about winning every argument. It is about changing the game you are willing to play. You stop auditioning for empathy and start screening for respect. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. Pattern, interrupt. This week, every time conflict appears, pause and ask one brutal question. Am I trying to be understood here, or am I quietly demanding respect? Your answer will expose your frame. In the next section, we will turn that awareness into a concrete, repeatable habit. Cold blood, clear mind, training, dark stoicism in real time. You cannot demand respect with a shaking voice. You cannot command power with a nervous system on fire. Let's begin. You asked, am I trying to be understood, or am I demanding respect? Dark stoicism is the answer to that question written in your body, not in your arguments, not in your explanations, in your pulse, in your breath, in the way you refuse to flinch when someone tries to drag you into their chaos. Picture it. The attack lands. A co-worker questions your competence in front of the team. A partner throws an accusation like a knife. A stranger online calls you a fraud. Heat in your chest, tightness in your throat. Your mind sprints to defend, to explain, to correct their reality. That urge is the leash. That urge is how they pull you. Dark stoicism is cutting that leash. It is the disciplined refusal to let external chaos dictate your internal state. You feel the emotion fully, but you do not broadcast it for free, and you do not act from it impulsively. This is not about pretending you do not care. It is about caring without giving them access to your control panel. Here is the biology your enemies rely on. An insult, a public shaming, an accusation spikes cortisol and adrenaline. Heart rate up. Tunnel vision. Your brain shifts into survival mode. In that state, you are more suggestible, more obedient, more likely to accept their frame. and let them be the judge. Manipulators know this even if they cannot name the hormones. They attack to light you up, then steer you while you burn. So calm is not a personality trait. Calm is a weapon. When you stay cold while they heat you, you keep your options. You keep your authority over your own narrative. How do you train this in real time? Micro practices. First, 3 conscious breaths before you respond to anything charged. Nose in, slow mouth out. Again. While you breathe, you say nothing. Second, when you feel the spike, you deliberately lower your voice and slow your speech. You talk like you have all the time in the world. Third, you use silence instead of immediate justification. They attack, you pause, you look. You let the weight of their words sit with them. Be warned, predators test for reactivity. They throw a sarcastic comment, a guilt trip, a fabricated story to see if you will dance. When you do not flinch, do not rush to explain, do not mirror their emotional chaos, they lose leverage. Their frame collapses because it needs your emotional energy to stay alive. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. So here is your challenge. For the next 24 hours, every time you feel the urge to defend, you will do nothing for 5 seconds. Breathe. Watch. Let the silence expose who is really out of control. In the next section, we will take that cold, steady presence and turn it into strategic empathy, reading motives, vulnerabilities, and leverage while everyone else is still busy reacting. X-ray vision, strategic empathy and reading people's shadows. Now that you can sit in silence, we weaponize what you see in that silence. You are not going to be the most reactive person in the room anymore. You are going to be the one quietly mapping the battlefield. Let's begin. Strategic empathy is not softness. It is not you turning into an emotional sponge, absorbing everyone's pain while you shrink. Strategic empathy is the ability to feel and understand another person's emotional state and motives without automatically aligning with them, without sacrificing your own interests, without handing them the authority to judge your reality. You see their feelings, you decode their needs, but you do not bow. Picture it. You walk into a room and instead of asking, "Do they like me?" you scan who needs to be admired, who fears abandonment, who craves control, who avoids conflict like a child hides under a blanket. These are not random quirks, these are predictive codes. The one who needs admiration will attack through praise and withdrawal. The one who fears abandonment will cling, love bomb, and then threaten distance. The one obsessed with control will use rules, guilt, and disappointment as weapons. The conflict avoider will manipulate in the shadows because they are too afraid to confront directly. This is not about becoming cold and numb. It is about refining empathy into a targeting system. Dark psychology does not suppress empathy, it sharpens it. You stop drowning in other people's emotions and start reading them as data. You see where they are weak, where they are dangerous, and where they are irrelevant to your power. You become dangerous, you become untouchable. Be warned, manipulators rely on your untrained empathy. The love bomber who future fakes commitment, promising marriage, trips, a forever after 3 weeks, is testing how fast your nervous system bonds. Strategic empathy steps back and asks, what need is driving this pace? Fear of abandonment? Need for control? You feel the intensity, but you do not defend, you do not explain, you do not rush to reassure. You detach, you negotiate reality instead of submitting to their fantasy. Picture the boss who weaponizes team spirit. They say, everyone else stayed late. Are you not committed? Old you would scramble to explain, to prove you are good. Strategic empathy, here's the subtext. I control you through guilt. You clock their need for authority and image. You respond with calm boundaries, not apologies. I deliver results during my work hours. If you need a different arrangement, we can discuss it. No defense. No emotional discount. Or the friend who lives as a professional victim. Every conflict becomes an attack on their identity. Tears, stories, guilt. Strategic empathy sees the pattern. They gain power by collapsing into weakness. So you stop rushing to rescue. You stop over-explaining your side. You state your line once, clearly, and let their performance expose itself. Once you can read motives this clearly, the real question appears. Where do you draw your lines, and how do you enforce them so cleanly that you never have to raise your voice? That is where we go next. The frame is the throne, owning reality without saying a word. The frame is the throne. And most of your life you've handed that throne to whoever speaks the loudest. Let's begin. You learned to argue, to defend, to explain. You did not learn to own reality. Frame is the invisible story of what is happening here, who is being evaluated, whose standards apply, what counts as acceptable behavior. If you do not set that story, someone else will, and you will feel it in your body as anxiety and pressure to perform. Picture it. You walk into a meeting. One person is relaxed, leaning back, speaking slowly. Another is rushing, over-talking, answering every question before it's finished. Who has the power? The one who reacts less. The one who behaves as if they are the default and everyone else is responding to them. Be warned, you do not hold the frame by talking more. You hold it by needing less. You do not chase topics. You do not answer every question. You do not accept every premise. When someone throws a loaded line, "Why are you always late?" the child in you wants to defend, to explain, to beg the invisible judge for mercy. The dark, disciplined part of you pauses and asks, "Who decided this is a courtroom?" This is not about winning debates with clever logic. It is about refusing to live as the defendant of your own life. Research on framing effects shows that the way a situation is presented changes decisions even when the facts stay the same. When you treat a comment as an attack, you step into the role of the attacked. When you treat it as data about the other person's control strategy, you stay in authority. Non-verbal dominance is how you broadcast that authority without a word. Steady eye contact that does not dart away. A relaxed posture that does not fold in on itself. Controlled gestures. A voice that stays low and even when someone raises theirs. Studies on dominance perception show people read these cues faster than they process your words. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. So how do you reject their frame in real time? You use clean, minimal language. That's not how I see it. Silence. I'm not interested in defending that. Full stop. We can disagree and still move on. No explanation. No emotional essay. The moment you start justifying, you are telling them they are the judge and you are the child begging not to be punished. Pattern, interrupt. Picture an argument you've had 100 times. The accusations start, your heart rate spikes, you launch into your usual speech, but this time, mid-sentence, you stop, you lean back, you breathe, you look at them with calm, unblinking attention and say nothing. 5 seconds. 10. You watch their discomfort grow as the frame flips. They are the one performing now. The more you practice this, the more people reveal who they really are when they cannot hook you. And once your silence exposes them, the next step is to decide what consequences you attach to their behavior. That is where your boundaries become real power. Razor wire boundaries. Saying no like a dangerous person. Razor wire boundaries are where your silence grows teeth. You watched their discomfort when you didn't bite the bait. Now the question is simple. What does it cost someone to cross your line? Picture it. Boundaries are not slogans, not Instagram quotes, not emotional speeches about how you value yourself. Boundaries are where your self-respect is enforced in behavior. What you tolerate, what you walk away from, what you never explain twice. That is your real standard, not the fantasy version you talk about when you are hurt. This is not about sounding strong. It is about making your no more real than their pressure. Research on boundaries and assertiveness shows something uncomfortable. People who say no clearly are respected more over time, even if they are disliked in the moment. Why? Scarcity and consequence. When your time, energy, and attention are not freely available, you gain value in the social market. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. Be warned, weak boundaries signal to every manipulator that you are open for business. The one who always explains why they can't, instead of calmly saying they won't, advertises themselves as a child asking for permission. The dark psychology mindset flips that. You do not defend your boundary, you state it once, and then you let reality do the talking. Let's begin with work. Last-minute demand. Can you stay late and fix this tonight? Old you scrambles, defends, over-explains your schedule. New you. No, I'm not available tonight. I can look at it tomorrow. Period. No nervous laughter, no autobiography. If they push, you repeat, I've already answered. When you stop performing, the frame shifts. They are the one begging. You are the one with authority over your time. Now the partner who drags you into circular arguments. Same topic, same accusations, no resolution. You feel the heat rise in your chest, the cortisol spike, the urge to defend your reality again. Instead, you say, we talked about this. I'm not repeating myself. And you end the conversation. Phone down, room exited, access revoked. You are not proving your innocence to an internal judge anymore. You are controlling the length of the game. Friend or stranger disrespects you in conversation. You do not debate your worth. You say, I don't talk to people who speak to me like that. And you physically remove yourself. Baiting message online or on your phone, no counterattack, no essay, no reply. Silence plus withdrawal of access is the sharpest no you will ever send. A dark psychology mindset treats boundary violations as data, not drama. They showed you their level, you don't argue, you adjust access, you don't plead, you reposition people in your life, less time, less information, less emotional availability. So here is the test. If you enforce just one non-negotiable boundary this week without defending it, how many people in your life would instantly reveal their true level of respect for you? The long game. Dark psychology in career, love, and negotiation. So here is what happens when you pass that test. When you stop defending and start observing, your entire life begins to rearrange around your new level of power. Picture it. You walk into work on Monday and you shut the tap. No more emotional oversharing, no more venting to whoever is within 3 feet of the coffee machine. For 30 days, you become a ghost with eyes. You listen, you watch. You clock who people lower their voice around, who they rush to impress, whose emails get answered first. Titles say one thing. Reality says another. You notice the quiet project manager everyone defers to, the receptionist who knows every secret, the senior exec who never raises their voice but never gets interrupted. You stop trying to please the entire office. You align with power players. Short, controlled conversations. Competence on display. Zero neediness. You are not begging for approval. You are positioning for leverage. That is dark psychology in slow motion, strategic attachment, not childish people-pleasing. Then there is your love life. Be warned, this is where most people collapse. Someone comes in hot, constant compliments, future faking. We'll travel here, we'll move there, you're my soulmate. Your nervous system lights up like a casino. Old wounds start hoping this time the fairy tale is real. But there is a different way. You recognize the pattern. You label it, not them. Love bombing, fast attachment, high promises, low proof. You pull your emotions back inside your body. You slow the tempo. You calmly renegotiate the frame. We move at my pace. Respect my boundaries or this ends. No screaming, no essays. No need to explain your standards like a child begging a parent. When the manipulator pushes past your limits, you do not argue. You walk. Silent, clean. You let their attack die in the vacuum of your absence. Now business. Picture the entrepreneur who stops taking competition personally. They study competitors' weaknesses like a surgeon studies anatomy. Where do they overpromise? Where do they break trust? Where do they leak power? By reacting online to every slight. While everyone else is triggered, they remain stone calm in negotiations. Heart steady, voice low, questions precise. They frame offers so the client feels sovereign. Here are your options. You stay in control. I handle the risk. The client feels empowered, but the structure of the deal quietly routes the most benefit back to the entrepreneur. This is not about deception. It is about understanding how framing shapes decisions and refusing to be the one emotionally hijacked at the table. Over months and years, the payoff compounds. Fewer crises, better deals, more respect. People stop testing you with guilt trips because they learn there is no button to press. Your reputation shifts. Calm, unshakable, impossible to manipulate. You become dangerous, you become untouchable. And here is the real twist. At some point, this stops being techniques you remember and becomes an identity you inhabit. So who are you when the darkness is no longer leaking out in self-sabotage, but quietly integrated into your core? Hold that question, because the next step is not about what you do. It is about who you are willing to become when no one is there to judge you but you. Owning your shadow, ethical darkness versus malice. When you stop performing for an imaginary judge, you meet someone far more dangerous, your shadow. Picture it, all the traits you were punished for as a child, your aggression, your envy, your hunger for dominance and control. You push them down to stay good, to stay loved, to stay safe. But repression doesn't erase them. It weaponizes them against you. You feel it when you overreact to a tiny insult, when you explode after months of silence, when you sabotage a relationship or a job and then tell yourself a pretty story about bad luck. That is the shadow leaking. Unconscious. Unaimed. You think you're being moral, but you are actually being weak because you refuse to own the full range of your reality. Let's begin with a hard line. Using dark psychology is not about turning into a villain. This is not about becoming a cold manipulator who treats people like disposable objects. It is about integration. It is about taking those disowned traits and putting them under conscious authority so they serve your life instead of secretly running it. There is a difference between power and malice, between a wolf protecting its territory and a predator hunting for sport. When you study tactics, when you learn frame control, when you train yourself not to defend or explain, you are building a nervous system that can hold pressure without collapsing. That is protection. That is design. Exploiting, degrading, leaving people shattered for your entertainment. That is pathology. Research on the dark triad makes this brutally clear. Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy. In their extreme forms, they destroy trust, careers, and lives. But mild expressions, especially strategic thinking and emotional detachment, often correlate with success in high competition environments when they are tempered by conscience and long-term thinking. The trait is not the problem. The absence of an internal break is, so you need a test, a simple, unforgiving ethical frame. Do your tactics increase your sovereignty and reduce chaos in your world? Or do they leave a trail of broken people, scorched earth, and enemies who now obsess over your destruction? If your wins require constant damage control, if your name tastes bitter in every mouth that speaks it, you are not powerful. You are short-sighted. Pattern interrupt. Imagine this. You fully accept your capacity for coldness, for calculation, for walking away without explaining, for saying no without defending, for seeing through an attack without announcing that you see it. But you do not use it to hurt. You use it so no one can weaponize those same traits against you ever again. You stop being guilt-tripped. You stop being emotionally blackmailed. You stop handing the frame to anyone who cries louder than you. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. Be warned, this inner acceptance will change how people experience you. Some will feel safer. Some will feel exposed. In the next section, we will take that integrated darkness and show you how to aim it at boundaries, negotiation, and life design so your power stops being an accident and becomes a strategy. Your new code, living as the calm, untouchable outlier. Now it stops being an accident. Now it becomes a code. Picture it. You started as the child in the courtroom. Every room was a trial. Every face was a judge. You survived by defending, explaining, oversharing your way into temporary safety. Fast forward. That same reflex has been running your adult life, bleeding power every time you open your mouth to prove you are good. But there is a different way. You have walked through it in this journey, from compulsive defending to frame control, from emotional flinching to dark stoicism, from people-pleasing empathy to strategic empathy that reads motives, leverage, and weakness without announcing itself, from porous, guilt-soaked boundaries to razor-wire lines that cut cleanly without a speech. This is not about becoming cold and cruel. It is about becoming calm and untouchable. Your new maxim is simple. It is safer to be respected than understood. Let that sentence sit in your nervous system. Every day, you will be forced to choose between the two. Do you explain your side, or do you protect your frame? Do you chase their understanding, or do you command their respect by your silence, your standards, your exits? Respect shows up in tiny choices. What you respond to, what you ignore, what you walk away from without a closing argument. Someone fires a passive-aggressive shot in a meeting. Before you would explain, defend, over-clarify. Now, you hold eye contact, let the silence expand, then move the agenda. No defense, no performance, authority. You are no longer trying to be relatable. You are becoming an outlier, calm when others are chaotic, observant when others overshare, unreactive when others are baited. The most dangerous people are not loud. They are impossible to guilt-trip. You become that presence, the one people instinctively do not want to cross, not because you threaten them, but because your reality does not bend to emotional blackmail. So you need a code, simple, brutal, daily. Don't defend, don't chase, don't overshare. You observe first. You decide slowly. You enforce quietly. If respect drops, access drops. No debate, no round 2 discussion, no essay explaining why. Studies on boundaries show that clear no makes people respect you more over time. You are living proof of that. You do not argue for your worth. You regulate your access. Picture it in practice. A partner throws an accusation. A boss implies you are ungrateful. A family member launches the familiar guilt trip. Your body spikes. The old courtroom lights flick on. This is the crossroads. Do you fall back into testimony, or do you run the code? Breathe, observe, ask one clean question, or say, noted, and end the scene. You become dangerous. You become untouchable. Let's begin the real work. The mindset is worthless without repetitions. Your next conversation, your next accusation, your next manipulation attempt is not a crisis. It is your training ground. In the next section, we will take this code and plug it directly into negotiation, money, and life design, so every interaction becomes another rep in your new reality. Step into the shadows. Your next move starts now. So here's the real threat. If you walk away from this and stay the same, you don't stay neutral. You stay on trial. Picture it. Every room you walk into, there's an invisible courtroom. Every conversation, a hearing, every disagreement, a sentencing, you speak, and you're already in the defendant's chair, scrambling to defend, to explain, to soften your edges so no one calls you selfish, cold, difficult. That is not communication. That is emotional bleeding. You have lived as an emotional defendant. Your boss raises an eyebrow and your stomach drops. Your partner sighs and you launch into a monologue. A parent hints at disappointment and you regress into a child, begging the invisible judge to declare you good again. This is not about truth. It is about power, frame, and who gets to define reality. Be warned, if you refuse this transformation, nothing external has to change for your life to stay small. Same job, same relationships, same patterns, different year. You will keep leaking authority every time you rush to clarify, every time you let a manipulator's mood set the emotional weather of your day. But there is a different way. When you embrace a dark psychology mindset, you stop being easy prey. You become harder to manipulate, harder to guilt, harder to move with cheap attacks and fake urgency. You read motives, not words. You see leverage, not drama. You design a life that serves your values instead of other people's demands. You don't become cruel, you become dangerous, you become untouchable. So let's turn the knife inward for a second. Where are you being nice instead of honest? Where do you smile, nod, and agree while your entire nervous system screams, no? Who actually controls the emotional tone of your day? Your own standards, or the most reactive person in the room? And what would shift if you fully accepted your darker impulses, the envy, the anger, the hunger for power, without acting on them destructively, but using them as data and fuel? This is not about becoming a cartoon villain. It is about radical self-possession, emotional detachment, strategic empathy, the ability to sit in calm silence while someone projects their chaos onto you and refuse to pick it up. So here's your concrete challenge. For the next 7 days, pick one arena, one relationship, one context. At work, with that undermining colleague. At home, with the guilt-tripping parent. With the partner who weaponizes disappointment. In that space, you run the full stack. No defending, no explaining, no desperate essays about your innocence. You listen, you observe, you let silence do the heavy lifting. You use one clear question to flip the frame. You enforce one boundary and do not move. Watch what happens. Watch how people recalibrate around you when the old emotional levers stop working. Some will escalate, some will respect you more. Some will quietly back away because their control no longer lands. Your job is not to fix their reaction. Your job is to hold your frame. Now, this cannot be a motivational hit you binge and forget. This is reps. This is conditioning. Rewatch this. Take notes. Choose one principle to apply in your next interaction. Today, silence, fogging, amused mastery, or a single non-negotiable boundary. If you want deeper dives into dark psychology, power, and self-mastery, subscribe, follow, stay in this work. Because this is not a video, this is the first negotiation with who you refuse to be anymore. And the real question is, when the next attack comes, will you walk back into the courtroom or will you let the silence answer for you?